Before Facebook existed, Zuckerberg built a site that scraped student photos without permission to let strangers rate their attractiveness. Harvard shut it down in days. He was 19. The next 2 decades looked almost exactly the same, just at a scale of 3 billion people. Here is every major failure, in order. FaceMash. In October 2003, Mark Zuckerberg was a 19-year-old sophomore at Harvard. He hacked into Harvard's residential house photo directories, scraped student ID photos without permission, and built a site called FaceMash. Users could pick who was hotter between 2 classmates placed side by side. Within hours, 450 people had visited and cast more than 22,000 votes. The Fuerza Latina and the Association of Black Harvard Women condemned it immediately. Harvard's Computer Services Department filed a complaint. Zuckerberg shut it down the same night after traffic overwhelmed his connection. He was charged with breaching security, violating copyrights, and violating individual privacy. He was placed on academic probation. He was not expelled. Zuckerberg later wrote, "Issues about violating people's privacy don't seem to be surmountable." He was 19 when he wrote that. He ran a 3 billion user platform for the next 20 years. The pattern started before Facebook existed, stealing the Facebook idea. In late 2002, 3 Harvard students, Cameron Winklevoss, Tyler Winklevoss, and Divya Narendra, came up with an idea for a Harvard social network called Harvard Connection. They hired Zuckerberg to build it. He accepted. While working on their project, he began building his own. He stalled their development with slow responses and missed deadlines for months. In February 2004, he launched the Facebook. 6 days after launch, the Winklevoss twins accused him of stealing their idea. The lawsuit ran for 4 years. In 2008, they settled for $65 million, $20 million in cash, and $45 million in Facebook stock. The confidential settlement amount was accidentally disclosed by one of their law firms in a marketing brochure. The twins later argued the stock had been misrepresented at the time of settlement. At Facebook's IPO in 2012, the stock portion alone was worth around $300 million. By the time Facebook reached a $1.7 trillion market cap, the $65 million settlement looked like one of the worst deals ever accepted. The twins invested their payout in Bitcoin in 2013 and became billionaires. That particular chapter ended well for them. The next failure involved what Facebook did with its users, without asking them first. Newsfeed privacy revolt. In September 2006, Facebook launched Newsfeed. It automatically aggregated everything you did on the platform, who you friended, what you posted, what events you attended, and broadcast it to every connection you had. Users had never been asked if they wanted this. The reaction was immediate and furious. Within 24 hours, nearly 750,000 users had joined protest groups. The protest groups were organized on Facebook itself. Zuckerberg issued a public apology. He kept the feature. His reasoning: the information was already technically public to your friends. The complaint was that broadcasting it automatically felt like surveillance. Facebook disagreed. Newsfeed went on to become the central architecture of every social platform that followed, and one of the primary mechanisms by which misinformation spread at scale for the next 2 decades. The next feature was even more invasive, and tracked what you did when you weren't even on Facebook. Beacon. In late 2007, Facebook launched a program called Beacon. It partnered with external websites to track purchases users made on those sites and automatically post them to their Facebook profile feed. No opt-in, no warning. The default was on. Someone buying a surprise Christmas gift had it announced to their entire family. Someone buying an engagement ring had it posted before the proposal. A man bought his wife a pair of diamond earrings on Overstock. His wife saw the post on Facebook before Christmas. MoveOn.org organized a petition with 50,000 signatures. Zuckerberg issued an apology. Facebook added an opt-out mechanism. Beacon ran for another year before being shut down in 2009 following a class action lawsuit. Facebook paid $9.5 million to settle. The core principle that Facebook's business required tracking users across the web never went away. Beacon was just the first public version of something that became standard practice. The next failure was even harder to defend because Facebook ran it deliberately on purpose. Manipulating your emotions. In 2014, a paper published in the academic journal Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences revealed something unusual. Facebook had secretly run a psychological experiment on approximately 700,000 users without their knowledge or consent. For 1 week in 2012, The company manipulated the news feeds of selected users, showing some people more positive content, others more negative, to test whether emotional states could be transferred through social networks. They could. The paper was published. The world found out. Facebook's response. Users had agreed to this under the terms of service. The backlash was global. Academics, ethicists, and regulators condemned the experiment. The UK's Information Commissioner's Office launched an inquiry. Facebook expressed regret that the study upset some people. Not that they had run a secret psychological experiment on 700,000 people without their knowledge, that they had upset some people. The next failure was larger in scale and involved an outside firm, but Facebook knew about it years before anyone else did. Cambridge Analytica. In 2013, a Cambridge University researcher built a quiz app on Facebook called This Is Your Digital Life. Around 270,000 people downloaded and used it. Because of how Facebook's API worked at the time, the app also harvested the data of every friend those 270,000 users had. The total, data on up to 87 million Facebook profiles. That data was sold to Cambridge Analytica, a British political consulting firm. Cambridge Analytica used it to build psychographic profiles and target voters in the 2016 US presidential election and the Brexit referendum. Facebook discovered in 2015 that Cambridge Analytica had the data. They asked Cambridge Analytica to delete it. Cambridge Analytica said they did. Facebook did not verify this, did not inform users, and did not disclose the misuse in its public filings, despite knowing about it. In March 2018, whistleblower Christopher Wiley gave the story to The Guardian and The New York Times. More than $100 billion was wiped from Facebook's market value in days. Zuckerberg testified before Congress in April 2018. The FTC fined Facebook $5 billion, the largest privacy fine in U.S. history. The SEC separately fined Facebook $100 million for misleading investors by describing the risk of data misuse as hypothetical, while knowing it had already happened. Zuckerberg was not held personally liable. Facebook's stock rose 22% in the year after the settlement. The fine amounted to about 23 days of Facebook's annual profit. The next failure was not a data scandal. It was something that happened live, in front of everyone. Facebook Live atrocities. In 2016, Facebook launched Facebook Live, real-time video streaming for any user, anywhere, immediately. Within months, it was used to broadcast murders, suicides, and acts of violence in real time. In 2017, a man in Cleveland live-streamed himself shooting a 74-year-old man on Easter Sunday. The video stayed on Facebook for nearly 2 hours before being removed. In March 2019, the Christchurch mosque attack in New Zealand was live-streamed on Facebook for 17 minutes. The shooter used a head-mounted camera and posted the link to 8chan before opening fire. Fewer than 200 people watched it live. None reported it to Facebook during the stream. The platform was not notified until 12 minutes after the stream ended. By then, the video was everywhere. In the first 24 hours, Facebook removed 1.5 million copies of the attack video. 1.2 million of those were blocked before they could be uploaded. The other 300,000 were available to view for varying lengths of time. Facebook subsequently changed its rules to ban users who break major policies from using Facebook Live. The feature that Facebook had celebrated as a way to connect the world had been used as a distribution tool for a terrorist attack, reaching a global audience instantaneously. The next scandal came from inside Facebook's own research. Instagram knows it harms teenage girls. In September 2021, the Wall Street Journal published leaked internal Facebook research. The document showed that Facebook had been studying the effects of Instagram on teenage mental health since at least 2019. The findings were direct. Facebook's own internal presentation stated, "We make body image issues worse for 1 in 3 teen girls." A separate study found that 13.5% of teenage girls in the UK said Instagram worsened thoughts of suicide. Another found 17% of teenage girls said Instagram made their eating disorders worse. Facebook had this research. They did not publish it. They did not act on it. The whistleblower was Frances Haugen, a former Facebook product manager who had copied tens of thousands of internal documents before leaving the company in May 2021. Haugen testified before a Senate subcommittee in October 2021. Facebook's products harm children, stoke division, and weaken our democracy, she said. Facebook's response. Haugen had worked at the company for less than 2 years and had no direct knowledge of the topics she was discussing. They also announced they were pausing development of Instagram for children under 13. They did not pause Instagram. A few weeks after the congressional hearings, Zuckerberg announced the company was changing its name, the Metaverse. In October 2021, Facebook changed its name to Meta. Mark Zuckerberg announced the company was going all in on the Metaverse, a virtual world where people would work, socialize, and exist through avatars. He presented a demo of the platform. The avatars had no legs. The company had chosen to render the upper body only. Over the following 3 years, Meta's Reality Labs division, the unit responsible for the Metaverse, lost $10.2 billion in 2021, $13.7 billion in 2022, and $16.1 billion in 2023. That is $40 billion in operating losses in 3 years. An internal document leaked by The Verge in 2022 showed that average daily active users in Horizon Worlds, the main metaverse platform, had dropped significantly, and that even Meta employees were not using it voluntarily. The document noted that most Horizon Worlds users don't return to the app after the first month. Meta later admitted it would need to cut its targets for Horizon Worlds users significantly. The social media platform that had renamed itself after the future it was building was struggling to get its own staff to spend time there. Zuckerberg eventually shifted the company's focus to AI. The Reality Labs losses have continued every year since. The next failure lasted 6 hours and cost $6 billion in a single day. The Facebook outage. On October 4th, 2021, Facebook, Instagram, and WhatsApp went completely offline. Not slow, not degraded. Gone. The outage lasted approximately 6 hours. The cause was a faulty configuration change to Facebook's backbone routers that disrupted communications between its data centers. What made this particular outage different from most tech failures was the internal dimension. Facebook's internal tools also ran on Facebook's own infrastructure. Employees could not communicate with each other using standard internal systems. According to reports, employees working to fix the outage could not access the buildings where the servers were physically located because the door access systems also relied on Facebook's internal network. Physical access badges stopped working. Engineers had to be manually escorted into the facilities. Mark Zuckerberg lost approximately $6 billion in personal net worth over the course of the day as Meta's stock fell. The platforms came back online. Nothing structurally changed. The next launch started with the fastest growth in app history and ended with 80% of users leaving within a month. Threads. In July 2023, Meta launched Threads, a text-based social network designed to compete with Twitter during its most chaotic period under Elon Musk. Threads reached 100 million signups in 5 days. It was the fastest-growing consumer app in history. Then Meta removed the chronological feed. Then they removed the desktop app. Then they added algorithmic recommendations that prioritized content from accounts users didn't follow. Then they removed basic features that Twitter had offered for years. Users who had signed up out of genuine frustration with Twitter found Threads harder to use than what they had left. Daily active users dropped by more than 80% within weeks. Threads eventually rebuilt features, improved stability, and recovered a significant portion of its audience over the following year. But the initial collapse was a case study in a platform prioritizing growth metrics over the experience that had driven growth in the first place. The final failure on this list affected an app that 2 billion people rely on, and showed what Facebook does when it has leverage. WhatsApp Force Policy Update. 25 million users switched to Signal in 1 week. In January 2021, WhatsApp issued a mandatory update to its privacy policy. Users were told they must accept new data sharing terms that would allow WhatsApp to share data with Facebook or lose access to the app. There was no opt-out. Accept the new terms or stop using WhatsApp. The reaction was immediate. Signal, the encrypted messaging app, gained 25 million new users in the week following the announcement. Telegram gained 25 million more. Governments and regulators worldwide raised concerns about coercive consent. Germany's Data Protection Authority ordered Facebook to stop processing WhatsApp user data under the new terms. WhatsApp pushed back the deadline for accepting the terms, then extended it again. Then, months later, quietly implemented most of the underlying data sharing regardless. The users who stayed, the vast majority, ended up with approximately the outcome WhatsApp had announced. The ones who had switched to Signal had already left. Facebook began with a 19-year-old hacking a university server to rate strangers without asking. In between, the same company manipulated emotions, harvested data without consent, broadcast a live terror attack, and spent $40 billion on a virtual world nobody visited. Zuckerberg apologized, testified, paid fines, renamed the company. The platform added 3 billion users anyway. That is either the greatest business story of the last 20 years, or a warning about what scale without accountability actually looks like. Probably both. If you want to understand exactly where Facebook sits inside the entire social media ecosystem, the 7 levels of social media is on screen right now.